Winterfell was colder than usual, even for a Stark. Ned stood at the balcony of the Great Hall, looking at the snow-covered courtyard. He remembered Robert's words clearly. "I need you, Ned. Come be the hand of the king." Against his better judgment, he had agreed, but now, standing in King's Landing with secrets boiling in the shadows, Ned Stark had made one silent vow to himself. He would trust no Lannister. He had arrived in the capital with his daughters Sansa dreaming of princes and balls, Arya chasing cats with Needle. Ned, though, walked carefully. Littlefinger had tried to pull him into his games. Varys spoke in riddles. But one thing became clear to him within days: the Queen, Cersei Lannister, was hiding something. And whatever it was, it reeked of danger. Jon Arryn's death had already raised too many questions. Now Ned had the book Jon died protecting. It was full of the noble houses and their bloodlines, useless to most but not to someone like Ned. As he flipped through the pages night after night, a pattern started to appear. The Baratheon children all had black hair, yet Joffrey, Tommen, and Marcella all had golden hair, Lannister hair. Ned's heart grew heavier with every page he turned. The realization was bitter. Robert's children were not his. They were Jaime's. His heart ached for Robert, for the man he once knew, now a drunken shadow of his former self. Telling Robert meant war, but staying silent meant betrayal. Then came the moment of truth. Cersei came to speak to him in the Godswood. In the original history, Ned warned her to flee, giving her time. But not this time. Not this Ned. He looked her straight in the eye, his voice colder than the northern winds. "I know your secret," he said, "and I will tell the king. You will answer for your crimes." Cersei's smile didn't reach her eyes. "You think honor will save you, Lord Stark? We are not in the north anymore." But Ned didn't flinch. He sent a raven to Robert, who was out hunting. He ordered his most trusted guards to stand watch. He met with Renly Baratheon and showed him the book, the bloodlines, the proof. Renly, always ambitious, understood what it meant. If Joffrey is not Robert's heir, then Robert's brothers have a claim. Renly whispered, eyes wide. "We must act now." That night, Littlefinger came to Ned, offering his usual games of betrayal and promises. "Support Joffrey," he urged. "Let him be king. You can rule from the shadows. Honor is for the dead." Ned refused. "I will not support a lie." Littlefinger's smirk faded. "Then you'll lose. They will crush you, Lord Stark." But Ned had already made up his mind. No more politics, no more games. He had sent word to Stannis Baratheon too, the rightful heir. If war was coming, so be it. But it would be a war based on truth. By the time Robert returned from his hunt, wounded by a boar, Ned was at his side. Robert was dying. With his last breaths, he asked Ned to write his will. "Let my son rule," he whispered. Ned hesitated. Then, instead of "my son," he wrote, "my rightful heir." That single change would change the fate of Westeros. And so, the game had changed. Ned had not trusted Cersei, and now, instead of being arrested in the throne room like in the original timeline, he stood with Renly, with guards loyal to Robert, and with a signed will naming Stannis the next king. Cersei was cornered, but a lion is most dangerous when wounded. And across the sea, whispers of dragons returning began to stir. King Robert was dead. The bells of King's Landing tolled low and long, mourning the fallen king. But inside the Red Keep, war had already begun, not with swords but with whispers and parchment. The will, signed with Robert's own shaky hand, named his rightful heir as king. And Ned Stark held that document like it was both sword and shield. Cersei did not attend Robert's final breath. She was already preparing to place Joffrey on the throne. But when she marched into the throne room the next morning with the boy king by her side, the surprise waiting for her made even her cold face pale. Ned Stark stood beside the Iron Throne with Ser Barristan Selmy and Renly Baratheon at his side. Dozens of gold cloaks, now under Renly's influence, stood around them. Varys watched from the shadows. Littlefinger was nowhere to be seen. "My lady," Ned said, voice calm but sharp, "you are no longer the queen. The king is dead, and his will names his true heir, Stannis Baratheon." Cersei's eyes narrowed, her voice low and venomous. You dare defy the crown, bold Stark? No, my lady, Ned said, holding out the will. I serve it. Joffrey looked confused, staring between Ned and his mother. I am the king. My father said I would be king. You are not Robert's son, Ned said bluntly. The silence that followed was loud and brutal. Gasps echoed through the hall. Ned's words struck like an axe. You are Jaime Lannister's bastard. The truth, once spoken, could not be buried. Cersei's mask cracked. Rage boiled in her eyes. But she was not stupid. She saw the swords, the will, the truth laid bare in front of the court. She turned and left with Joffrey, not in defeat, but in planning. That night, all hell broke loose. Cersei made her move. She tried to free the Red Keep with her children. But Renly, now fully aware of her treason, had every gate watched. The gold cloaks arrested her as she tried to sneak through the stables in a hooded cloak. Jaime Lannister, upon hearing of her capture, tried to fight his way to her, but Ser Barristan intercepted him. Steel rang out in the stables. Ned didn't want blood, but Jaime wanted revenge. And when he charged at Ser Barristan, he didn't expect the old knight to still be that fast. The Kingslayer was disarmed and thrown to the ground, his golden hand bloodied by his own arrogance. By morning, the realm had changed. Cersei and Jaime Lannister were imprisoned in the dungeons. Joffrey screamed from his cell like a child denied a toy. Word was sent to Dragonstone. Stannis Baratheon was named King of the Seven Kingdoms. He would return with his fleet in 2 weeks. Until then, Ned would serve as Lord Protector of the realm. But peace was still a far dream. Tywin Lannister, hearing of his children's arrest, was enraged. He began gathering his bannermen, ready to march. The Westerlands prepared for war. The lion had been caged, and now it would claw its way back with fire and fury. Sansa, caught between childhood dreams and the cruel truth, cried for Joffrey. Arya trained harder with Suryo, now understanding that King's Landing was not a place for innocence. Renly, tasting power, started to think perhaps he should be king, not Stannis. And Littlefinger, ever the snake, began whispering in his ear. And far away, across the narrow sea, a dragon queen watched the stars, dreaming of fire. The game had not ended. It had only changed. And Ned Stark, once a man of honor, was now a man at war. The city buzzed with gossip like a disturbed beehive. In every alley, at every wine-soaked table, they whispered the same question. Did Ned Stark just destroy the Lannisters? But Ned knew better than to feel safe. King's Landing was not Winterfell. Here, truth was a weapon, but so was money, and the Lannisters still had plenty of both. Cersei and Jaime sat in the black cells beneath the Red Keep. Ned hadn't visited them yet. He didn't need to. Varys kept him informed. Jaime cursed everyone who passed by. Cersei said nothing at all. That scared Ned more. Littlefinger had disappeared from court, claiming sickness. But Varys suspected he was slithering through back tunnels, poisoning minds, bribing guards, whispering rebellion into the ears of anyone who would listen. Meanwhile, Renly Baratheon grew louder in court, bolder. He smiled like a prince, dressed like a king, and acted like the throne already belonged to him. My brother is dull as stone, he told Ned over breakfast. Stannis will never win the people. But me? I know how to rule and charm. Why support a man who burns books when you can have one who wins hearts? Ned put down his cup slowly. Because I believe in law, not charm. Stannis is the rightful heir. Renly's smile cracked just a little. Then you may lose everything to a man with no warmth in his blood. That same day, a raven arrived from the Eyrie. Lysa Arryn, ever paranoid, had closed her gates. I will not involve myself in your war, she wrote. The Vale stands alone. She offered no aid, no soldiers, no shelter. Ned burned the letter without reading it twice. But darker news followed. From the Riverlands, word came that Tywin Lannister had moved. His forces, nearly 30,000 strong, were gathering at Harrenhal. The monster of the West was not going to sit idle while his name was spat on in court. And if war was what they wanted, Tywin would give it to them. Ned summoned Robb from Winterfell. The boy was just 16, but he needed him now, not as a son, but as the Lord of the North. Letters were sent to House Manderley, House Blover, and the Umbers. the North would answer if called, and war was already knocking on the gate. But then came the worst news. Varys entered the Tower of the Hand at dusk, his steps soft, face pale. "Lord Stark, the Queen has confessed." Ned blinked. "What?" "She's asked to speak to you alone," Varys said carefully, "and she says she'll tell you everything. Every secret, every plan, but only if you bring Sansa." Ned's chest tightened. "Why Sansa?" Ned's chest tightened. "Why Sansa?" "She claims the girl is her leverage, or perhaps her last hope." Against his instincts, Ned agreed, but he took every precaution. 10 guards, 2 maesters, Arya hidden nearby with Shireo, ready to raise alarm. He brought Sansa to the black cells, where Cersei sat behind the bars, pale but still composed. She looked thinner, but her eyes, those green, clever eyes, were alive with something dangerous. When she saw Sansa, her lips curled into a faint smile. "You still love my son," she said softly. Sansa nodded, tears in her eyes. "He's not a monster. He's just scared." Cersei tilted her head. "You're wrong. He is a monster, because I raised him to be one." Ned stepped between them. "Speak your truth, Cersei. No riddles, no games." And then she did. In a voice flat and empty, she confessed everything. How Jon Arryn discovered the incest. How he was poisoned before he could act. How Robert was manipulated into hunting, made drunk so a boar would finish the job. How Littlefinger helped plan it all, dreaming of chaos and power. And then she said something that chilled Ned's bones. "Your wife? She has my brother." Ned stared at her. "Your wife took Tyrion, on the road, somewhere near the Vale. And now you have me, Jaime, Joffrey, my whole family locked in cells." Her voice trembled now. "Do you think Tywin will let that stand?" Sansa gasped. Ned's hand gripped the bars. Cersei leaned forward. "You've killed your daughter's future, and you don't even know it yet." Ned left the dungeons feeling like he had just walked out of a crypt. The war wasn't just coming anymore. It had already begun. Beau broke before dawn. The Raven from Riverrun arrived just as the first light touched the Red Keep. Lord Hoster Tully was gravely ill, but his son Edmure had written the message with trembling urgency. "Lannister forces have crossed the border. Villages burn. Riverlords are raising banners. My father cannot lead. We need help." Ned read the letter in silence. His mind spun through too many truths. Tywin had finally unleashed his rage, and the Riverlands would be the first to bleed. It wasn't just revenge, it was a warning. He called the small council into emergency session. Renly swaggered in late. Sir Barristan came in fully armored. Grand Maester Pycelle looked like he hadn't slept. Varys, as always, slithered in without a sound. Ned tossed the letter on the table. "Tywin has started a war." Pycelle mumbled about peace and tradition. Renly smirked, tapping his fingers. "And still we wait for Stannis. Why not let me ride out and crush them?" Ned slammed a hand on the table, voice hard. "You are not the king." Silence followed. Renly didn't argue, but the look in his eyes was sharp. Deep down, he had already crowned himself. He just hadn't said it out loud yet. Later that day, another Raven came, this time from Catelyn. She was in the Vale, and she had taken Tyrion. She had done it in the name of justice, believing him responsible for Bran's fall. Ned felt the cold bite of panic crawl up his spine. The pieces were coming together. Cersei hadn't lied. Tyrion was gone, a prisoner of House Stark. And now the Lannisters had the perfect excuse to burn the world. That night, he stood alone in the Godswood. The werewood's red eyes stared back at him like judgment. "You trusted no one," he told himself. "And yet, your house may still fall." But he didn't give up. He wrote 3 letters that night. One to Catelyn, demanding she take Tyrion to Riverrun under heavy guard and keep him alive at all costs. One to Robb, urging him to begin the march south with the northern banners. And one to Stannis, with all the proof of Joffrey's illegitimacy and a desperate request. "Come to King's Landing. The kingdom is yours to claim. Delay, and the Lannisters will take everything. Delay, and the Lannisters will take everything." But even as those ravens flew into the black skies, darker winds stirred. That very night, the prison guards were bribed. When the sun rose, Jaime Lannister was gone. 2 guards dead, throats slit, 1 missing. The door to his cell left open. It had Littlefinger's stink all over it. Ned's fury boiled. He doubled the guards on Cersei and Joffrey, but he knew it wouldn't matter. Jaime was already racing west, to Tywin, to war, and as if fate wasn't cruel enough, Sansa came to him, cheeks wet with tears. "I want to go home," she whispered. "Please, father. I don't want to marry Joffrey. I don't want any of it." The girl who once dreamed of crowns now begged for the North. Ned hugged her close, feeling her small heart racing. "You will go home," he promised. "But not yet. Not until the storm passes." But the storm didn't wait. The very next morning, the banners of House Lannister were spotted at the edge of the Blackwater Rush. Thousands of men, led by Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, the Butcher of the Riverlands, now stood at the gates of King's Landing. Ned gathered the court. Stannis had not arrived. The North had not arrived. They stood alone. Renly was gone, vanished from the city in the night with Sir Loras Tyrell and several hundred men. Another betrayal. And Varys. He came to Ned quietly in the dark. "You have made too many enemies," he said. "Even honor cannot stop what is coming." Ned looked at him. "Then I'll die with it." But Varys shook his head. "You won't die. You'll be forced to live. And that is far worse in a city like this." At that moment, a rider crashed to the gates, covered in dust and blood. A message from Robb Stark. The North was marching, 20,000 strong, and they would not kneel. The air in King's Landing thickened with tension. Every street, every alley whispered of war. The common folk didn't know the full truth, only that a lion was roaring at the gates and the wolf was howling back. Ned stood in the Tower of the Hand, looking out over the city. From the east, Gregor Clegane's forces had set fires to farms and outposts. From the west, Tywin's armies swelled by the hour, and yet still no sign of Stannis. But hope had arrived with the northern rider. Robb Stark was crossing the neck, flanked by bannermen with cold eyes and sharp steel. The North was not just answering the call, was ready to tear down the South if need be. Ned clutched the letter from Robb again. One sentence struck him like a blade. "I ride to war, father, not for glory, but for our name." The boy he raised was gone. A young wolf had taken his place. Still, time was running thin. With Jaime now free and Cersei playing her game from a dark cell, it wouldn't be long before the Lannisters made their next move. Ned gathered what allies he could. Sir Barristan remained loyal, as did a few key houses like House Selmy and House Valerion. But the court itself had become a nest of betrayal. Worse, the people began to turn. With grain burning in the countryside and food prices rising, unrest stirred. The Lannisters had gold. They bought loyalty with coins and fear. Ned had truth, but truth didn't fill empty bellies. Then came a knock. It was Varys, of course. He moved like a ghost and spoke like a priest. "Your daughter Arya," he whispered, "has been spotted near the dungeons, practicing with a blade, a thin sword, like a needle." Ned tensed. "You followed her?" "I follow everything." Ned's first instinct was to scold Arya, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was pride or fear. He looked at Varys sharply. "Do you know where Littlefinger is hiding?" Varys smiled faintly. "That depends. Do you want him dead or captured?" Ned didn't answer. That night, chaos exploded. The Mountain, acting on orders from Tywin, attacked the Gold Cloaks at the Eastern Gate. In the confusion, a group of Lannister agents attempted to free Cersei and Joffrey. It was bloody, desperate, and fast, but they failed. Syrio Forel and Arya saw it first from the training yard. When the bells rang, Syrio ordered her to run to find her father. Arya raced through the Red Keep like a shadow, leaping over dead guards, avoiding the flaming arrows raining down from the towers. She finally found Ned outside the throne room, blade in hand, his northern guards behind him. They had won, barely. Cersei was dragged back to her cell, screaming of betrayal and vengeance. Joffrey cried, his royal mask broken, and Sir Gregor vanished, slipped out of the city like a demon returning to the dark. Ned knelt beside Arya, wiping blood from her cheek. "This city," she whispered, "is cursed." He didn't disagree. But then the true storm came. A raven from Dragonstone arrived the next morning. It was not from Stannis, but from Davos Seaworth, his smuggler-turned-kin knight. Stannis prepares to sail, but he no longer believes the throne alone matters. He has taken a red woman into his service. She speaks of fire, of prophecy, of a god who burns. The king listens. He burns false idols now. Even men. We are no longer the same. Prepare yourself. Ned read the letter twice. Stannis was coming, but he was no longer just a man of law. He was something darker now, something touched by shadow. The throne room echoed with silence later that day as Ned stood beneath the Iron Throne. He stared at it, not with desire, but dread. So many had died for it, so many more would. And still, across the sea, the whispers of dragons grew louder. Dothraki riders now followed a silver-haired queen. Cities fell in her wake. The war for the throne had begun, but the war for the soul of Westeros was just starting. Smoke rose from the east like a warning written in the sky. King's Landing had survived the first wave of chaos, but the silence that followed was worse than any battle. The streets were lined with hungry eyes, whispering mouths and daggers hidden beneath cloaks. Food was low, trust was lower. The smell of war clung to the air like rot. Ned Stark had done the impossible, held the Red Keep without bloodshed on the throne itself. But every victory came at a cost. He had enemies on all sides now. Jaime Lannister was gone. Tywin was burning the Riverlands. Renly had disappeared with Loras. And Stannis was no longer just a king. He was turning into something else entirely. And now, whispers reached Ned's ears that a red comet had been seen in the sky. Maesters called it a sign of change. Old women called it a dragon's tail. Ned called it a bad omen. Meanwhile, Arya had stopped being a child. She followed Syrio like a shadow, training harder each day. But she no longer laughed, no longer asked questions. She had seen blood now. She had almost been taken by Lannister men, and she had learned to stab. Sansa too had changed. The girl who once dreamed of balls and courtship now sat silently by a window, watching the city with the eyes of a prisoner. She refused food, refused comfort. She only asked once, "Will I ever be allowed to marry someone I choose?" Ned couldn't answer. He was preparing for something worse than marriage. He was preparing for siege. Robb's army had reached the Twins, where Lord Walder Frey waited like a spider in his web. The old man demanded marriage pacts in exchange for crossing the river. Ned swallowed his pride and agreed. Tell Robb to accept the deal. Cross the river. Reach Riverrun. Hold the Riverlands. Don't stop. Catelyn was already there, riding between camps like a raven with no nest. She had brought Tyrion to Riverrun as ordered, but she warned Ned in a letter. He smiles too easily. He is not a prisoner. He is a game piece. And Tyrion was playing. From his cell, he spoke with Edmure, with Catelyn, with guards, with anyone who'd listen, always polite, always careful, but always planting seeds. He knew his father would come for him. Ned knew it too. And then Stannis arrived. The black sails of his ships filled Blackwater Bay like vultures. The stag sigil of House Baratheon flew proudly beside a new one, a red heart in flames. Stannis didn't ride into the city with soldiers. He walked, alone. His new Red Priestess, Melisandre of Asai, walked beside him. She wore no crown, only fire in her eyes. They met Ned in the Great Hall. "You summoned me," Stannis said coldly. "I have come." Ned rose. "You are Robert's true heir. You are the king." Melisandre stepped forward. "He is Azor Ahai reborn, the chosen one. The Lord of Light burns within him." Ned stared at her. "I summoned a king, not a god." She smiled slowly. "Then you summoned both." The court was split. Some were relieved. Others feared what they saw. Soldiers spoke of fires lit at night. Prayers whispered in foreign tongues. A man burned in the square for denying the king's destiny. The smell haunted the city for days. Ned confronted Stannis in private. "If you want to win this war, do it with steel, not fire." Stannis only replied, "Fire is stronger," but the real fire was coming from the west. A raven arrived from Robb. Tywin had split his forces. Gregor Clegane had sacked salt pans. The Riverlands burned, And worst of all, Jaime Lannister had regrouped with 10,000 men and was marching north toward River Run. The war had started, in truth, and the Iron Throne, still cold and sharp, waited for the one who would finally bleed enough to sit upon it. Blood ran thicker than politics, and now it flowed freely across Westeros. From the towers of River Run to the smoky fields of the Riverlands, the sound of war drums beat like thunder. The Lannisters had declared open rebellion against King Stannis. Jaime Lannister, now reunited with his father's army, marched with fire in his eyes and steel in his hand. But he did not expect the North. Robb Stark, barely 17, had outmaneuvered the Kingslayer. Crossing the twins after agreeing to Walder Frey's miserable marriage terms, Robb split his army and struck hard near the Whispering Wood. Jaime was caught. The young wolf had captured the Kingslayer. Again, when the Raven reached Ned in King's Landing, he held the message in trembling hands. "I have him, father. The lion is in chains, awaiting your justice." Ned Stark, a man who had once believed war could be avoided with truth, now realized that only war had brought him justice. The city of King's Landing, however, was no longer his to control. Stannis Baratheon had taken the throne not through battle but through legality, truth, and fear. With the Lannister heir exposed, Robert's will verified, and the Red Keep under watch, the Iron Throne passed to him without ceremony. The crown was placed on his head by Grand Maester Pycelle, though the man trembled with every word. But the people didn't cheer. They feared, because Stannis was no Robert. He outlawed brothels, shut down half the taverns, ordered public burnings of those who refused to kneel or those who worshipped false gods. Melisandre stood beside him at every ruling, her red eyes watching nobles with the intensity of fire about to consume wood. And then came the vision. She declared one night in front of the court that she had seen it in the flames, a girl with silver hair and dragons. She will come for the throne in fire and blood. Ned frowned. "What girl?" Melisandre turned to him, her voice almost a whisper. "Daenerys Targaryen." That name hit Ned like a sword to the spine. He had once tried to protect her, begged Robert not to have her killed, and now she lived. With dragons. The very thought sounded mad, but nothing sounded mad anymore. War, sorcery, fire made flesh, and kings who prayed to gods Ned didn't understand. The city itself was boiling. The people feared Stannis' flames as much as they feared Lannister retaliation. Markets emptied. Rats filled the alleys. Bodies swung from the gates thieves, heretics, doubters. The Red Keep had become a temple of fire, and Ned Stark had become a prisoner of his own victory. He sat in the small council meetings, watched innocent men burn, heard tales of dragons rising in the east, and knew that the truth he had fought for had led to a darker kind of rule. Even his daughters had changed. Arya no longer smiled. She trained in secret with Syrio, now a master-at-arms for the Stark household. She had killed once already a Lannister spy sneaking into the tower. She hadn't cried afterward. Sansa, still in the Red Keep, refused to look at the Iron Throne. She had been offered a match by Stannis to some minor lord, but she rejected it. "I will never marry again," she said quietly. "Not unless I choose, not unless I am free." And Robb, now with River Run secured and Jaime Lannister as his prisoner, had written again, "They want to call me king in the north. What should I say?" Ned didn't know what to write back. He stood at the window of his tower looking down at the city that had nearly swallowed him. His enemies were gone or in chains. His family had survived, for now. But peace? No. Peace had become a myth. Beyond the sea, Daenerys Targaryen gathered strength. In the west, Tywin still held Casterly Rock. In the south, the Martells watched with silent hatred. And everywhere, the flames of Melisandre's god reached further, in trying to save the realm with honor. Ned Stark had lit the match that would burn it all.